Bass Pro Shops Crappie Masters All-American Tournament Trail proudly present In the Outdoors with Brad and Brian. In the Outdoors with Brad and Brian is also brought to you by Strike King Lure Company, the official lure company of In the Outdoors. Ardent Reels, Reel Care, and the new Ardent Rods, the official reels, rods, and reel care of In the Outdoors. Vicious Fishing Line, the exclusive line of In the Outdoors. Sensible Signs and Designs in Higginsville. Porcupine Fish Attractors. Taft Heating and Air Conditioning. Spring Creek Taxidermy. The Tree Stand Archery Pro Shop. And Marshall Flooring. Now, let's go in the outdoors with Brad and Brian.
Good evening and welcome to In the Outdoors with Brad and Brian on KMMO on what's turned out to be a gorgeous Sunday evening. Hopefully you've had a chance to get outdoors and enjoy it. That time of the year, school will be starting here in just a couple, 3 weeks. State Fair getting ready to start. And I can tell you from my weekend experience, there were a lot of people in the outdoors. Of course, I'm your host, Brian Sowers, alongside your co-host, Mr. Brad Closeman. Brad, how you doing tonight?
Doing great, Brian. Great
Big
weather.
weekend? Yeah, good weekend for you?
Yep. Did a little fishing behind the house. Caught a few crappie. So
very good. Any size?
11, 12. 11, 12 inches.
Let's see. Mental note to Brian, go fishing at Brad's house Monday afternoon. Sounds pretty good. Well, I tried my luck down at the Lake of the Ozarks. I am seasick at this point in time. I rarely get seasick, but I spend enough time going up and down and all over the place. In fact, my trolling motor spent more time out of the water than it actually did in the water going up and down.
Yeah, I'll bet so.
There were a whole lot of people down there this weekend, and they were having a lot of fun, to say the least.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that later in the program. We've got a great show lined up for you. We've got all kinds of information for you in the second half hour of the program. Brad, where's your giveaways tonight? Did you forget them?
Nope, they're out there in the truck. So,
very good. So we got some great giveaways tonight. And by popular demand, in studio with us tonight, the Wiper Sniper himself. No, not you, Raymond. And your noodles there. We've got Jack Vanderpool in studio. We're talking wipers and stripers and hybrids and you name it, all kinds of great stuff. Of course, many of you did not know about Jack and his service, guide service. Well, the Kansas City Star came out on a Sunday, and there was old Jack right there in the paper. Jack, that had been quite a thrill, you know it?
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was just a great experience. The whole article and getting there was great.
You betcha. Jack's got all kinds of tips, techniques. You're going to learn a lot about maybe species of fish you don't get a chance to fish for. Maybe you want to go fishing with Jack, too. We'll talk all about it on the show tonight on In the Outdoors with Brad and Brian. We'll be right back. Want to improve habits? Welcome back to In the Outdoors with Brad and Brian on KMMO on a Sunday evening in studio, my friends, right here from the Marshall area, right up the road, a guy who helped me out on one of my worst days, and we may talk about that later on. We're talking fishing first. Jack Vanderpool in studio with us. We're talking wiper fishing. And, Jack, I think when we talked off the air, we're going to start right there because I think a lot of people, A, they don't fish for them, B, they don't know how, and C, they don't know actually what they are. So let's kind of talk about that because people have heard of wipers and stripers and white bass and hybrids. Can you kind of enlighten people kind of the difference in all these different species?
Yeah, they started about 40 years ago. The striper is really a saltwater fish, and they'll travel to freshwater to spawn, and they'll travel hundreds of miles. And they would get trapped sometimes, and then they would notice that these saltwater fish done quite well. And so they took the striper egg and they fertilized it with a white bass, and that's where the word wiper comes from. And the results is a shad-eating, ferocious, big fighter. They're unbelievably strong.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the states didn't start stocking them until in the 70s. And I think from an angling point of view, they're probably the fastest. It's a really fast-growing sport. I've just in the last 4 years since I've been guiding, the amount of people now that's fishing for them, they're a great eating fish if they're cleaned properly. And pound for pound, they're the most ferocious freshwater fish I've ever caught.
Wow. Sounds like fun already.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack, what's the average size and what's the biggest they can get?
I think the state record is between 20 and 21 pounds. We'll average, honestly, probably 8 8.5 pounds would probably be the average we put in the boat. We catch a little bigger, I think, using live bait, in my opinion anyway. I should have kept track, but we've put 25 or 30 over 12 pounds in the boat so far this year. But it's not unusual. We'll put 7 and 8s in the boat all day long.
Wow. Now, you're fishing basically on Truman Lake. What makes Truman such a good lake for wipers? Why do you focus on that lake? And are they in other lakes around the state?
Yeah, they're in several lakes. They're in Thomas Hill, Blue Springs Lake, Lake of the Ozarks. I'm sure there's more that I don't know about.
Yeah.
But Truman Lake, they got a lot of humps, a lot of flats, got some good descending points that they like, road beds. Various times of the year, depending on the weather, it's just a really, really good situation. It's not a real deep lake. That's the reason the true striper wouldn't go over there. They can't live in a shallow lake like that. But it's just kind of made for the hybrid there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they also breed them right there, right next door at the.
Oh yeah, at the hatchery.
Yeah, at the hatchery.
Yeah.
They put 150,000 a year in there. About 2 inches long.
Nice. Very nice.
Wow. Now, tell me kind of what the difference is between the white bass and the wiper. Do they school like the white bass, and do you see them busting like the white bass down there?
Yeah, they'll actually travel with the white bass, and there's some speculation that they might even be breeding back to the white bass. They haven't got that confirmed yet, but they will. The difference between when you see a hybrid bust and a white bass bust is the splashes are a lot bigger. but they'll bust the water just like the whites, and they'll actually follow them around. They travel together.
Now, a lot of times people think about their shooting or fishing for white bass. They go in the fall, September, October run, things like that, going up the creeks. But you told me, man, in July, you've been catching a lot of them. Why in Truman, why in July are these wipers? You know, that's a good month when it gets hot like this as opposed to that fall run. And do they do that fall run?
Yeah, they do the fall run. They done an article in Missouri Game and Fish on hot weather fishing, and we talked about the hybrid. And I don't have an explanation for this, except maybe the shad is more active when it's hot. But some of my best months has been, especially last year, when the drought was going on, we had 100, 102 in temperature. We got videos. We were catching them right in the heat of the day, and I don't have an explanation of why that is, other than that the shad are really lively during hot weather like that. So
the Truman Lake mystery continues.
Yeah. Jack, is there certain parts of Truman that are better to fish for these? I know there's 3 different arms. What arm is more productive?
I fish 10 miles down the Grand to down the Palmy, and I haven't been towards the Clinton side, but I do know that a lot of the crappie fishermen that were doing the spider rigging was complaining early on because when you spider rig and you get a hybrid and a number 3 pole, they all go. It's a mess. So I know they're all over the lake. It's just I don't really have had the need to go any further than those areas. But they will travel. When the weather's stable, that's when the fishing is best for them. Having that striper parent, they roam, and sometimes targeting these hybrids is as much a hunting game as it can be a fishing game.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we've been talking about, we haven't got into baits yet, but a lot of times after a front moves through, they'll actually feed on the bottom with chicken livers and stuff.
Really?
It's weird.
Well, I kind of took a question because I was going to ask you, this time of the year, what kind of depths are you looking at? But obviously these fish move up and down the column, maybe depending on weather and whatever the case may be.
That's true. You'll see them come up and bust the top. I watched the school for almost an hour a couple of weeks ago constantly, but they weren't big. They were like 12, 14, 15 inches. And I've caught them as deep as 25 foot.
Wow.
And recently, right in the river channel, 25 foot down.
Mm-hmm.
So they just, their nature is, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And that might change overnight.
Like I said, that goes back to that striper mentality,
right.
so to speak. That gene in them gets to that roaming around.
That's right.
And maybe looking for the bait fish, too. I'm sure that's part of it also.
Yeah, they're going to go where the bait fish is for sure.
Okay.
This time of the year, if somebody wanted to fish, and take a weekend and go down, are they looking to look for flats? Are they looking for river channels? Or are you looking to get inside of a cove? What's the certain things you're looking for to catch these fish?
I almost exclusively look for humps and flats close to a river channel. They want access to that deeper water.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you can get a hump that's, let's say, 15 to 16 foot below the surface of the water, and then fish those drop-offs, they're going to be in that area somewhere. The KK Island, you'll see a lot of that. That's ideal.
Mm-hmm.
That's ideal for hybrids. Around the dam where that weir is,
yes.
That's all that area. You're looking for humps and flats, and where they have access to deep water. And then actually the bait fish is good to be there too.
Jack, when you see that, and especially in Truman, I see that. Lake of the Ozarks, some too. You'll see those fish busting. It's kind of a trial and error deal. You see a group of fish busting. You just kind of go to that and see what's in that, and you kind of check this area. Maybe they're busting. Another area, to kind of stay in those locations where history tells you these wipers should be.
Yeah, I have most everybody I think has GPS anymore, but
yep.
We've over the past 8 years that I've fished for them, only guided for 4. I've got about 200 different waypoints that we've
mm-hmm.
marked, and they tend to feed in the same areas. So if I was to go fishing tomorrow, I would head for those same spots. But every once in a while, you'll see them traveling from one area to the other. You'll catch them on the graph, but by the time you stop and turn around, they're still going.
Yeah.
So, they're kind of they're really a hard fish to describe, because they do have some characteristics of staying in the same area, but yet if a front moves through, they totally change and they may travel.
Right.
Jack, are you staying put, putting it out an anchor, or are you doing a lot of trolling to catch these fish?
I've got a GPS-controlled trolling motor,
mm-hmm.
and basically I'll hunt and try and look around with a big motor at an idle, and when I locate them, then we'll actually, there's 2 ways we can do it. Sometimes they'll stay in a school.
Mm-hmm.
I have, in fact, last week we caught our limit an hour and a half,
mm-hmm.
and I just anchored the trolling motor, and we sat right there, and they just surrounded us, and it was awesome. By the way, I got all these on video on YouTube.
Great!
That is good.
Absolutely great movies. But then again, sometimes you won't see them schooled up, but you'll see 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 there. So we'll put the trolling motor on about a half a mile to 0.7 miles an
mm-hmm.
hour. Put the shad down at whatever depth they are, which is normally 15 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
That's average. And we'll kind of go in that area where we've seen them, and then occasionally you'll see them stacked up on the bottom after a front move through. They look like firewood, and that's when you want to bring out the either cut shad, chicken liver, fish form like you would a catfish.
And that brings up, I was going to ask you about electronics. A lot of people now have side imaging, down imaging, and even the 360, Humminbird 360. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at some of this stuff, and maybe you don't have the side imaging, what's that show up like? Because there's so many different fish out there. Can you identify those on your electronics? Kind of, okay, this is probably a group of wipers here.
I take people fishing, and they're amazed. They almost look at my monitor more than they're fish. I've got the Lowrance HDS 10,
mm-hmm.
and it's got the color sensitivity. And the man that taught me how to fish, who's showed me how to set that sensitivity, because that color that you see on that depends on the surface that those sonar waves hit.
Mm-hmm.
Rock will show up red, yellow. Mud is blue. So you think about a hybrid, they've got scales, which is hard. A catfish has got skin, so that's soft. I've got my sonar set to where I can tell a blue cat because it's got a blue halo around it. A hybrid's got kind of a special bladder, so once I get this thing tweaked, the hybrid will show up red with a little yellow center, and the shape of the arc, is kind of unique. I do have the side imaging and the down scan. I've not used it that much on hybrids. I mainly look at cedar trees for crappie,
but nothing wrong with that either. On
but they do show up like a white, a white arc. It's not really an arc, more of a dot.
Right.
But I haven't used the down imaging too much, or side imaging on hybrids yet.
Amazing.
It is. You've talked about cut shad, Jack. So is there artificial baits that'll catch these fish also?
Oh, yeah. Anything that represents a shad, your sassy shad, your the flukes, you want to stick to a 4 to 6 inch, like the 5-inch curly-tailed grubs, the clacking wraps. So anything, the spoons. I usually always have a 3/4 inch spoon and a zero spook. When you see them busting like that, if you're close enough and with a zero spook, you can throw them halfway across throw over and bring it back, or the spoon. A lot of times after, because normally they don't stay up there very long. They'll hit for 15, 20, 30 seconds. But if you could take that spoon and throw over that, and if you can pull it high, you know how to keep the spoon up. Or if they quit, then let it flutter down right before you think they're going to leave the area, and sometimes that works. But yeah, there's a lot of different the jigging spoons and anything that represents a shad works. Rapalas works on top water, and sometimes it's. I've even got some Alabama rigs with some umbrellas, and I've also got a device that tells me how deep it is now when you're trolling that way back in the back.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. That was when I was going to ask you about the Alabama rig. Has it been successful for you at that without that whole cluster like that?
It pays off when sometimes when the front moves through again and everything changes. I've got a guide friend that makes those, and he sent me a bunch of them, and they work good. They work good. And I've got what they call a smart troll that through a Bluetooth system we put a device right above that Alabama rig, and it'll send to my phone how deep that is back there. Because a lot of time when you're trolling, you don't know exactly how deep that thing is back here. So it's kind of a cool thing. You look at your phone and say, we're 15 foot, and it even tells you the water temperature.
Nice.
So you can make those adjustments, and we try to put the live bait and artificial bait right on their nose, So.
Oh yeah, man, I'm missing out a lot of good gear, Brad. I'm learning so much stuff about.
Yeah, I've never heard of this. Why don't we have this?
I'm telling you, we need to go with Jack and take a look at this and make more notes on this kind of stuff. Rods and gear. When you're trolling like that, people want to come do this. They want to try it on their own. Is there special gear they need? Can they? Obviously, they're not going to take their little crappie rod out there. Well, I guess they could, but they might have a little issue later on with busted rods. What are you looking at in gear?
I use the ugly stick. I started out with a catfish, a 7-foot catfish. I went to ugly stick that now makes a striper rod, and I went to that. I've got pins. I've got Akumas. I use line counters. Using live bait, we know exactly how far to put them down there. I take people that's not experienced fishing, so I use 30-pound Andes line on it and 30-pound fluorocarbon leaders. I use the Gamakatsu octopus circle hooks. I use 5/0. But any kind of you could use the same equipment that you'd use on a catfish. If you,
Right.
you know, if you're a catfisherman, you probably already got what you need to catch hybrids with.
Very good.
That is cool. Wanted to ask you, you were talking about these are good fish to eat if they're cleaned right. What's the way to clean these, Jack, so you can enjoy them?
Well, I fillet them just like you do any other fish. Of course, when you get a fish 7 or 8 pounds, I don't try to go through the rib cage. I cut over them, but the big difference is that once you cut down the bone and then flip that fillet over, they have probably 1/8 of an inch of dark meat between their skin and the light meat.
Yep.
And that has to come off. All that red meat's got to come off. Then you got a vein in the center.
Yep.
So when we remove the vein, remove all the red meat, you've got a steak that I've had so many people tell me that they like it as well as any fish I've ever eaten.
Good.
And the thing about it is you've got a lot of variations. You can broil them.
Mm-hmm.
You can leave them whole, or you can chunk them up into chunks. That's a big part of my diet. So they're an excellent fish to eat.
Well, you catch so many of them, I can understand why. You mentioned earlier, you're talking about guys when they were spider rigging and things like that, catching them. What kind of different rod holders do you use, and kind of how do you configure those? Do you have them out to the sides, solely in the back, long line, and how do you set your when you set this up? How do you do that?
Well, I've got Driftmaster rod holders. The spider riggings, we go off the back of the boat when we're doing that.
Right.
And I use the Pro Series, which is the big, I think, what is it, 1/2 inch shaft.
Mm-hmm.
And go to a little stiffer rod. Need to go a little stiffer rod than the striper. But no, we go out the back. We don't do anything off the front. And I just don't do that much artificial stuff. Never had to yet, but it's certainly there, and we have done it, and it works when we have to do it.
Wow. So, if you're down there at Truman, I want to talk a little bit about your guide service. How many people can go, Jack, on a trip?
I put 4.
4 people to a boat?
4 to limit, but we only... I have to limit the number of fish to keep at 12. So 4 people, but only 3 can keep their limit. Only because cooler space, when you get 16, 8-pound hybrids or bigger, I run out of cooler space.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the bait, too. You talked about using shad, and obviously using pretty good-sized shad. Where do you get your bait for a lot of people? Do you catch it? Do you buy it? I'm sure at times, of course, you can throw a cast net down at the lake and catch it, to yourself. But when it comes to bait, if somebody wants to get bait, where do you even try to find, shad that size?
Well, first of all, you cannot buy live bait legally.
Right.
Most all my shad that I catch is in the back of coves. I've caught shad out in the middle of the lake. I'm a visual guy. I try to look at the flipping. I look at the surface of the water. And the ideal size that I look for is between 4 to 6 inches long.
4 to 6, okay.
Yeah. Right now, you can get all the big shad you want. You can find millions of the 1 to 2 inch stuff. Right now, it's hard. And I'm throwing the net 3 and 4 hours a day right now. And I throw an 8-foot net. 3 weeks ago, it was very easy to get everywhere that size. So, but you have to get a throw net and learn how to get on YouTube, and there's several ways of doing it. And just go out there, and that's step 1, and step 2 is keeping them alive. You got to have a bait box that will keep shad alive.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that was brought up a good point, too. I'm glad you mentioned that. For a lot of people that don't know, you can't go buy live bait at some hours. You can't do that. When you're doing that, do you put your bait on ice? What kind of aerator? Because that's a big trick. Even people that have minnows, they have trouble just using minnows for crappie fishing.
Yeah.
How do you keep that bait alive?
Well, first of all, what kills shad is their own scales. They shed scales very, very easily when they get stressed out. So you bring in 20 or 30 shad in a net. I have a holding tank, a 10-gallon tank that I put a cup of salt in for every 10 gallon of water. That de-stresses them. And I'll leave them in there about 10 minutes, let them descale. Then right there by it in my boat, there's a 50-gallon I use Gray Line bait box. It's got a carbon filter. It circulates the water, constantly cleaning it, and we also got an aerator in the bottom of it. And we also salt that. When I have a trip, I usually get the bait the day before. That's how long I can keep them alive.
Yeah.
And then about every 2 hours at night, I have to get up and check those filters.
Sure.
Reminds me of being a dad when, back when newborn came home. And you also have to watch the temperature. I don't like my bait box to get over 80 degrees. I keep it under 80 degrees. I have a bunch of 2-liter pop bottles that I throw in there to cool the water down, to keep it down. But it's a trick. But with good bait boxes, you can do it.
That's a great tip for all of you. Whether you're wiper fishing or even crappie fishing, you're using live bait. That's very important. You got to take care. If you don't have good bait, you're not going to catch any fish. So that's a big part of that. You mentioned water clarity. Earlier this year, we had all that rain. Water was terrible. How important is water clarity, and how muddy can it be for you to be successful wiper fishing?
I have never really had good success with real dingy water. Now, there's a point there, and I'm not real sure what it is. When it's real muddy, I don't catch them. But it comes a point in time, I don't know how to really describe it, where you can actually maybe see. I'll take a teacup, a white teacup, and just kind of look at it and judge. But it's the temperature was a big factor earlier in the year too.
Right.
Because I didn't think it was ever going to warm up out of the 50s.
It took a while.
Yeah. Right now it's just the water's just perfect down there. But you can catch hybrids in dingy water, but not real. You can't catch them in muddy, or I haven't had success. They eat. That's the thing that bothers me. I know they're out there eating something.
Yeah.
And but I haven't been able to figure them out when the water gets really muddy.
Right.
You've talked about catching what is the best time for people to go out and do this if they don't want to get a guide or something, Jackie? Is it morning, afternoon, or evening?
If they like top water action, the chances of getting into some good top water is early and late. But on the other hand, and there's always a but when you're dealing with hybrids, I've seen them top water all day long, off and on all day long. That bite varies. I don't know how to. We've been going out at 7 o'clock in the morning. Most of the time last year, we wouldn't go out till noon.
Yeah.
The bite, as we call it, is going to vary from front to front. Moon phases affects that. I really, they could go and catch hybrids any time of the day, depending on the conditions that the weather's created and the moon phases.
For people who are down there fishing, what do you consider a trophy fish? Here in Missouri, if somebody says, man, I want to catch a trophy hybrid, what's a trophy fish?
Well, the hybrid, 12 pounds and over is a hybrid, is a trophy. Now, I've had people mount them 8, 9, but, that's
everybody's
cool.
choice.
Yeah, that's cool. But I think any hybrid 12-pound and above, I'm fortunate enough, last year I caught one that was 16 pounds, 14 ounces.
Wow.
My biggest best.
Yeah. That's huge. You talked about taking folks out. Do you do half-day guide trips, whole day? When you set that up, how do you set your trips up?
I normally just call it a 5-hour trip.
Yeah.
And I'm maybe different, but at the end of 5 hours, if we're not had the success that I think we should, we'll stay out there as long as the folks can tolerate me. And I don't. That's just the way I feel. We charge people to go fishing, and at the end of 5 hours, I know. We'll pull it out. We'll stay an extra hour or two, and I don't charge for that as a rule.
Very good.
Do they need to bring anything, Jack, or do you supply everything?
They need to eat drinks, whatever they want to snack on, cameras, sunscreen, stuff like that. And then if they would want to take a fish home to mount, they need a cooler of at least 24 to 30 inches long that they can keep that in. I don't think they successfully yet. I don't know of any taxidermies yet. That anyway, maybe somebody will call in and say, "Hey, we do that. We'll do a replica of a hybrid."
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been around long enough. You can get striper replicas without,
Yeah,
sure.
But I don't know of any yet that will do with a hybrid.
Where do people need to meet you at if they want to set up a guide? I'm sure you'll talk about that, but when they call, if they're not familiar with the Truman area, do you go out of Starrett Creek, you go out of Shawnee Bend, Buxall?
Shawnee Bend Boat Ramp.
Shawnee Bend Boat Ramp.
I'm not affiliated with any marina yet. I've had a lot of offers, but I haven't done that yet. So we meet right there at the boat ramp at the dam.
Very good.
That is cool. It would be a good trip, Brian.
You betcha. Jack, you mentioned on YouTube. How could just people go to YouTube and kind of Google Jack Vanderpool or Wiper Sniper? And we want to talk about, your number and all that kind of stuff also.
Well, that'll work. You can Google my name and all kinds of stuff pops up. And but my website is www.jackvanderpoolguide, all one word, .com. And the home page has got all kinds of good information. They have a YouTube video button. Now all they got to do is hit that button. It takes you right to... I think I got 32, 33, 34 videos posted on there. And then I've got my Facebook address on the... Facebook's a good way to keep up with me because every time, almost every trip, I'll post pictures and comments and... Shad's hard to get, or I just keep them posted on the Facebook.
Phone number
660-229-2295.
I want to ask you. We always like to talk about getting families in the outdoors and things like that. Is this a good trip to take the kids out on the boat, or is this something you want to kind of wait for a little bit, or just get them out there exposed to it and get them in the boat?
I've got some heart-wrenching stories. I won't take time, but I've just had some great experiences with families and dads that's terminally ill, and this was, this was a fishing trip to spend time with the kids.
Sure.
Knowing anyway. And once again, I keep referring to the video, but you'll see that there's a bond that takes place between families and kids, especially when that 12-year-old gets a 12-pounder. I don't know how to explain it, but on the other hand, it depends on the child, but a lot of kids get bored pretty easy. Mm-hmm. So there's times when we're hunting for these hybrids, and it's maybe an hour and a half boat ride before we start fishing. So on my website, I discourage kids under 12, but I've sure made a lot of exceptions to that rule.
Man, that's outstanding because, I said, I can't imagine, and especially the fight when you talk about what a striper does and what a white bass does, the fight they put on. I can only imagine when that fish gets on the end of the line, the experience that, it's something like you've never seen before. There's just no other fish that does that.
No, I've had some big men. We're talking 200-plus, 6'4" guys that cannot get that rod out of the holder. That's how hard they pull. And they reach that, and the line's coming out, and they come up in their line, their hands cut with the line because they grabbed the rod in the wrong place.
Oh my gosh!
And then on the other hand, I've had 12-year-olds get right in there and get her out too. So
man, what a great experience, folks! You don't want to miss on this experience, and it's close to home too. By the way, now I mentioned earlier I'm going to tell a story here. We've talked about this on the show, Brad, and I hit that 180 class deer last year.
Yep.
So I think it was last year in that time. And it was right beside, in fact, the deer ended up in Jack's yard, as a matter of fact. Right beside that. Well, needless to say, you're trying to get to work in the morning. It's quite a traumatic experience when you look at your truck and you're going, this is not good. So you end up, wanting to take a look at the deer, called Jack. Jack took care of that. Not only did Jack take care of that for me, helping to get the rack back, but when we called the neighbor. Of course, I had all my work clothes on. Called my neighbor, Terry, up there. They came down. Jack loaned the tractor because the deer was big enough. We needed his tractor to gut the deer. So Jack loaned that out, took care of us all. Jack, I want to thank you. You, like I said, one of my worst days, you were a great friend there to call and help me out.
Appreciate it.
So I said he's always there to help you out on a situation. You're going to have a great time fishing. Congratulations on the article here in the Kansas City Star, too, again.
Well, thank you.
And you told me that's been in Nebraska paper, too. Lincoln, Nebraska?
Lincoln, Nebraska Journal Star, I understand. In fact, I've got people from Nebraska fishing this coming weekend.
Just make sure they're not Cornhuskers. No.
I'm going to try to give them some football tips.
Nice, man. I like that already. That sounds great. We can't thank you enough. Have we missed anything? Brad, I missed any great questions you need to pass along? Because this is great information for people.
I think we covered it all. It's just, if you've never caught one, it's hard to explain the power. And it's a fun trip. We've got a convertible top on the Bimini top, and which makes it a little bit more enjoyable, and get out of the sun.
Yep.
But it's a lot of fun. It's very addictive to me. I very seldom fish for anything else anymore.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. With that kind of tug and the fun like that, that sounds good. Jack, thank you so much for coming in tonight, man. I really appreciate it.
Nice.
Yep. And, folks, if y'all have any questions, get a hold of Jack, and set up a trip, because this sounds like a don't miss. This sounds like one of those trips you're going to be talking about for years and years to come.
Right here in your back door.
That's right. With a guy right here in your backyard almost.
That's right.
Sounds great. And that is Wiper Sniper, right?
Right.
Where'd that name come from?
Well,
it's one of those deals.
The Wiper was easy to come up with.
Yeah.
And then I read an article on how tough they were to target.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll just call it, a sniper target.
That's right.
So, that's where I come up.
All
with
came
it.
together.
Yeah.
Well, your trip's going to come together, too. Jack, thanks again so much for coming in tonight. Jack Vanderpool with us, my friends. Contact Jack. Go to YouTube. Take a look at those videos. Give Jack a call. 660-229-2295. Again, go to Facebook. Go to his website, jackvanderpoolguide.com. You'll find out all the information. And you'll see from the videos. I've watched some of these on YouTube. You go see the videos, you're going to go, I got to do that. Mm-hmm. So wait a minute. Next on my bucket list, Wiper fishing with Jack. Sounds good. We'll take a break. We'll be right back with more on In the Outdoors with Brad and Brian.
Tree stand archery and Sedell.
Just learned so much. There was stuff just from the electronics alone that I learned. Not to mention about the Wiper and all that too.
Absolutely.
What a cool interview.
If you're listening out there and you want to book a trip, we done booked one. So
yep, we're good. We're going to be. We're just trying to.
You might as well join the crowd.
Yeah, we're going to get a calendar lined up. We're going. No doubt about that. We're going after this deal.
Yep.
I want one of those.
Yeah, that's what I say. So anybody that's out there listening, please call Jack and get yourself a trip set up to catch some of these fish.
Yeah, and tell your friends about it, too. Say, man, you can't believe just an hour and a half down the road, you can go have more fun than you can stand.
That's right.
So many people, and that's cool. Go striper fishing, going on down to Beaver Lake, that's fine, too, and all that stuff.
Sure.
And I'm sure Jack's been down there, too. But, well, this is close. Really close.